Okay, I call the January Guam Board of Accountancy meeting to order. Present are board members Jenny Chu, Sean Phillips, Francis Baba, Taling Taikno, myself, John Onadera, and Executive Director Dave Sanford. The first item of the agenda is, well, I think we just first confirmed that this meeting has been properly noticed.
Yeah.
Yes, it's there. Okay. And I just want to start off by welcoming everyone back to our in-person board meeting. Thank you, Dave, for setting this up and arranging the video. So this is the first time. So this is a momentous occasion for us.
There you go. Yeah. Hoping that it works all the way through the meeting.
Yes. Okay, so the meeting's been properly noticed, so we can move on. Is the minutes from the last meeting, which was on December 15.
Move to approve. Correction. Second.
Second,
Yeah, I
okay.
think I got your
You got
corrections.
corrections,
So yeah, no problem. I've already fixed that.
Okay. Okay, then we'll just go straight into the old business, which is what you have on the agenda is the Guam Accountancy Endowment Fund update.
Right. The endowment fund, of course, is like the market going up and down every day. I mean, on an annual basis, year to date, I included the annual summary here, but we started the year with 4.7 million. We ended the year with 4.1 million. But then 14 days later, we were back to 14.3 million. So it's just up and down with the market, and it's going to continue. We basically paid almost 45,000 expenses for the year's investment management fees. That's the only management fees we paid. So anticipating that, as the market gets back to normal, we will too. So we should be somewhere around 4.5 to 5 million, probably maybe by the end of this year.
Okay.
If things normalize a little bit. We still have some money to contribute, but I'm not ready to do that yet until we determine what's going to happen with University of Guam and the program and the accounting program. We can maybe provide a little bit of incentive for them to do something.
Also, the EOG doesn't have any, I guess, planned use of the proceeds this remaining school year, right? Or even this whole calendar year.
Not at this point, because there's effectively no dean. There's just an interim dean. I think Dr. Jones, right?
Yes.
Interim dean. And I'm sure she has her hands full. So, and there's no plans at this point for the visiting professor program for the summer.
None, right?
No, and we're kind of waiting to see who's going to come on board and what we can do at that point, because the dean is part of the actual standing committee that oversees the program. So, and then we only have the two professors, Martha and Noreen. And they've kicked off the master's program, so they have one cohort going through that. So at this point, I think they're pretty much focused on that.
Okay.
The only good thing I'll say about the investment performance, I guess, is that all of the losses we incurred were all but $2,000 worth were unrealized. So it's a matter of market value in that sense. So hopefully the things will straighten out within this year, maybe.
Okay.
Did you was there a meeting of the advisory council, or did you get a chance to discuss anything?
We did have a meeting, but it was a different meeting from the usual meetings. This time the meeting was just members of the council and Dr. Jones. That was it. She just wanted to have a smaller meeting, and I think only 4 or 5 members showed up. So she just wanted to understand what the committee was doing. And I did mention the accounting. Well, I mentioned the ad hoc report, and then she said she would be interested. But I did ask her, what are your plans? Are you going to be leaving? In other words, is it going to be a waste of time to give her a report if she's going to look and not really take any action? But she said she will be with the school until, well, at least until the end of the semester.
Right.
So I don't know exactly what
Are
that
they
means.
waiting for the new president to determine who the new dean will be? My understanding is he's there through September.
His contract expires in August, and this we just met, I believe, for the new president, but they haven't even advertised his position.
It sounds like reasonable to expect that they won't announce a new dean until they get a new president.
Yeah, but if Dr. Jones is only going to be acting through the end of the semester,
Well, that's what she said. She committed. She said it's
that's what she
possible
committed to.
she could extend, but
Is she also the whatever they call it, chair of the division or division chief? Or
gosh, I don't know. I didn't ask that. She might be. No, it's not her. I think it's someone else.
Okay. Anyway, I guess we'll just have to wait and see at this point. There's
Yeah.
not much we can do otherwise.
But in the advisory committee is Mike Naholoa, and he's a regent.
Yeah.
And so he did, when he heard what I was saying, he said, oh, he's going to talk to someone just to ensure that, they can actively get visiting professors.
Yeah.
And get, at least to make use of the funds.
We'll see. We'll see. Yeah, okay. Anyway, that's, I guess where it stands. We just have to wait and see.
It would have been nice to have professors teach the master's program.
Well,
Even if it was
I've
virtual.
told Martha that's what, we're gonna do that, no problem, but you have to come up with, because
Right.
we don't have any ability to say who recruited anybody.
Yeah.
So it's kind of something they have to do their part, I guess.
Yeah, I think we were politely told that we don't have, we can't tell them who to hire.
Yeah. You
So
can't,
who
you can't tell
found the
us anything.
last set of professors that,
Huh?
that came out?
I did. I found all the professors that came
I
out,
see.
except for the two guys from Mississippi that Annette knew.
Yeah,
Those guys are from AGA. They've
They've been coming for AGA.
Yeah, I think what
They
we've
get
done
on
is
the
just
circuit.
recommend.
yeah.
And we disallowed their swimming in swimming pools when they come. Because previously they both went swimming and got infections
Yeah,
at the hospital.
yeah.
Cost us $8,000
Yeah.
of medical bills.
Yeah, I heard about that.
I mean, both times. I was like, let's,
Must be scary.
We need people with more physical
I think that
stature.
A little more resilient.
Yeah, there you go.
well, sorry, I know this is, we're detracting, but the tax professor you're bringing out, what's his name?
Jonathan Ingber.
He's willing to just fly coach. He said steerage.
He said he'd fly steerage. He said it's a waste of money for him to fly business class.
But where is he flying from?
Florida, South Florida.
That's
Yeah,
so
long
far,
way.
Lives in
Uh-huh.
Miami.
long haul. And he's not,
Well,
He's not a spring
he's not a
chicken.
spring chicken.
no,
Must be a good sleeper.
he's probably 78, 79 now. I mean, he's been coming, but I asked him before and he gets on the plane, he flies straight through and I pick him up at the airport and I'm like, you want to go to the hotel and check? No, let's go have dinner and get a bottle of wine.
Okay.
He's a small person, maybe he fits.
He
well
is.
in
That's
his
what he
seats.
said. He
Okay.
said he fits fine in economy. It's not a big deal.
I
And
think that's probably why.
he said the only advantage to him being in business class is the free drinks.
I think he's got to be older than 70.
No, he was,
Okay.
well, he's been coming for 6 or 7 years and.
Okay.
It's a
And-
Florida sun.
Florida
yeah,
son.
And he's, I think he said 78 or
Oh, because
79.
when he talks, he mentions these firms that,
Yeah.
he goes Ernst and Whinney,
I've been back long.
Arthur,
Yeah, well, the
Haskins and Sells.
Supreme Court judges that's written up in all the decisions. I don't know which one. Yeah.
Okay, well, that's good. He's willing to come back again. Okay, so
Anyway.
hopefully there'll be some movement, at least at the university.
We can only hope.
So new business, we can move on to the request for approval. Want to take us through the
Yeah,
applications?
through the applications. Well, we have two. We have two from Saipan, Doriza. And then we have one, Akina and Bora Peter. And she has a Washington license, so and we're licensing her under substantial equivalency. And then Miss Dule, she's being reinstated from Guam. So, but all total, we have 57 licensees. There's no issues here, but I just want to note that slowly the ALD and the CPA Verify is working because people are coming and saying, oh, what? My license is delinquent? How do I renew it? How do I get that kind of thing. So I have actually 3 or 4 of them here this month, but we've been seeing anywhere from 3 to 5 or 6 every month that are discovering that they're not current and renewing. So that's a good thing.
Do you need a motion?
57 licenses this month, so we're still hanging in there from volume wise at this point.
Yeah, we do need a
a
motion.
motion to
Approve.
approve.
Someone,
Okay.
Here's
Second.
a second by
Second.
Francis. Okay, thank you. Let's approve the application. Check are approved.
Okay. Then we go to the, we have 2 people requesting extensions for credits. They're in the process of taking the exam. The first one is a girl who is requesting the extension of her audit because she's passed it, but she was set up to finish her exam, but she had to send her passport off to get a visa back, and you can't get in the test center to take your exam without your passport or ID, and that's her ID. So she's requesting just 3 months, which is fine, and we're going to grant that. And then this Mr. Pancholi, who's diagnosed with basically it's not leukemia, but it acts like leukemia, and he's advised to be in the hospital for a month with a bone marrow transplant, and then not to go, anywhere, be isolated, I guess, for 6 months. So he's asking for enough credit to allow him to be treated and then finish his exam, which would be through the end of the year, just about. So
seems like such a short time for,
yeah, they
I
said
guess he can always ask for it.
1 month in the hospital and 6 to 8 months recovery. So and he's
I was going to
asked-
say that's a long time.
yeah, well, it's a long time to me.
Illness. I'm just thinking about his
familiar.
illness.
I know, I'm not familiar.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering.
Yeah, well,
16
bone marrow
months.
transplants, and they're not fun. So, but yeah, so he's obviously got a definite viable reason for extending. So we'll extend him
Yeah.
too.
Okay, for the first one, I mean, is that the only ID she has, the passport? Or it's required to have a
I
passport?
don't know, but she's in the Middle East, and and they're pretty strict about what they require, and I have no idea what, beyond a passport, I don't know what they have, but they actually have her mail her passport to get the visa, in order to get her visa back yet, so.
Okay, I mean, that's fine. I mean,
Yeah,
we experienced that too.
yeah. those things.
Stuff gets
I
stuck in the
always
Philippines.
query Pat Hartman and NASBA about things like that, because what their policy and what she said, yeah, that's a legitimate
Okay,
reasons. Okay.
okay, so you recommend approval for
Yeah,
both? Okay.
I think both of those are fine. Okay. They submitted the documentation here, so we reduced the amount of stuff we put in the report here, so don't want to see all of the medical stuff anymore.
Okay, that's it for the new business. I want to go next, general discussions.
Yeah, the next item we have is it's a letter that came from NASBA. And it's talking about the Minnesota legislation to create a multiple pathway for licensure. You know, there's a number of jurisdictions that allow you to sit for the exam with 120 hours of education, but you still have to have the 150 to get licensed. And we don't specify the 120, we allow them to sit before they complete their education. But we don't release the grades until they actually complete their education, which is down to 150 hours, not the 120, whatever. So in that sense, we're allowing them to sit for the exam before they complete their education, just like the other jurisdictions. But in order to get their grades, they actually have to complete the 150 hours, which is basically what the goal is in the first place, because without it, you can't get licensed, right? Well, a lot of the other jurisdictions say, well, you can sit for the exam at 120. They have nothing in their law, rules, regulations that says anything about after that. So you can sit for the exam, pass it with 120 hours of credit, but then you don't ever get licensed, you know, so they just kind of sit there. So I made the point that, and one of the executive director calls that doing that basically is just sanctioning the fact that you only own 120 hours of education. If you're never going to do anything about them getting licensed or anything else, then what are you really doing? And then this thing popped up. I hadn't even heard about this from Minnesota, but Minnesota is basically saying they're going to change their law and their say you can essentially go back the old way. You can get 150 hours in 1 year experience. You can sit for the exam 120 and get 2 years experience.
Sounds reasonable.
And then there's something else that they said more a hybrid pathway, which they haven't disclosed yet.
Yeah.
So of course, NASBA and AICPA has, you know, since day one said, no, you gotta have 150 hours, right? And to this date, I've never seen any empirical evidence that it makes any difference in terms of 150 hours of credit. There is none. But supposedly there's a higher initial pass rate for people who have the 150 hours, of course, because most of them have a master's degree and probably took the exam when they're taking the master's degree. But in terms of protecting the public, there's no real evidence that it makes any difference. And a lot of the states are beginning to talk about something like Minnesota's talking about, but then NASBA and AICPA said, well, wait a minute, because if you do that, you're basically going to screw your licensees because you will be non-substantially equivalent, which is the whole reason we went to the 150 hours in the first place. I think we were not the last, but next to the last to go to the 150 hours.
So Hawaii.
Yeah, Hawaii was the last because, of course, it takes them 10 years to do it. But we managed to be the last one and then extended as far as could and still be substantially equivalent. So what they're saying in this letter to the Minnesota, and it's sponsored by the Minnesota Society, but what they're saying is if you go back to the 120 for life, essentially equivalent, your licensees can't go anywhere else and practice on their mobility. They'd have to secure a separate license since you're not substantially equivalent and all that kind of stuff, right? And then your firms can't participate in firm mobility or any of those kind of things. So they're saying cut backwards, and it's not the way to go to increase the pipeline and, you know, all those kind of things.
It was dated January 5th,
Right.
but NASBA and AICPA, they came out with a joint statement
Yeah.
discouraging. Was that before this?
Yeah, yeah, because there's been a lot of rumbling
Yeah.
about it among the jurisdictions, and you know, even with us, I mean, I delayed it as long as we could because honestly, there is no evidence that it is required, that the additional education makes any difference in terms of improving the quality of the work of a newly licensed CPA to the point where it improves the practice to the public, i.e. the reverse, the reciprocal of that is that there's no evidence that CPAs with less than 100, newly licensed CPAs with less than 150 hours of credit are making any more mistakes than the ones with the 150 hours of credit. You know, so, I mean, that's the crux of the whole issue is why do it costs more money, it takes more time, you know, it reduces the number of CPAs we have. And is it really making any difference? And from the standpoint of protecting the public, not really. But from the standpoint of being a learned profession and all those things that AICPA and NASBA say, maybe.
Yeah, but if you haven't read that letter, I think they put out some
Yeah,
points. And they seem pretty adamant that
they're
not reversing.
pretty emphatic about not reversing.
Not reversing, and they're telling boards not to,
And now they're
don't
saying
even think about it.
that's the next item.
Oh, that's the next one?
Yeah, and that's the one that says that, you know, based on the fact that the AICPA and NASBA argument today is based on the fact that we've now got everybody under 150 hours. And we've been promoting this for so long, and now that there's a lot of action in various jurisdictions from this different, I'm not sure who the different groups are, but there's several groups that are saying, oh, this professional licensing, occupational licensing, we should do away with it, you know, all that kind of stuff. So that's what they're saying. ARPL is the Association for Responsible Professional Licensing. The AICPA and NASBA and the CPA license as being one of the few professional licenses that actually improves an individual's opportunities in terms of marketing, income, everything else, versus being a barrier to entry to the profession. They're saying if you go back to try to change this and go back to the old ways and you know, you're basically denigrating the program and the certificate and the license, and you know, it's going to be a lot easier for the people attacking now to just say get rid of it. So that's their argument at this point in this paper. They're pretty emphatic about it too. Of course, they've spent a good bit of money in the last 3 to 5 years on ARPL, you know, and trying to say why you need it and what the benefit is. And they did come out with a study. ARPL did a study, I think last year or the year before, that actually shows that there are increases in opportunity and income and benefits to having a CPA license versus professions who don't have a license, you know, a professional license like we do. So it's the age-old argument. It's been going on since 1982. I think Florida was the first one to enact 150 hours deal. Fortunately, I passed the exam.
Well, I guess what's the general feeling of the board members about 120, 150? I mean, we just implemented 150, but I'm just curious because the other states have implemented for a while and now there's all this coming back. I mean, it basically is 1 year of experience better than 1 year of education to get licensed. Depends what you're doing, right? I mean, probably too early for us to start talking about that since we just started.
Well, you know, thinking back on my experience, I got a Mac back in 1986. So
Wow.
I think I was one of the first to get that degree. I guess it depends on what you do to get those additional, you know, 30 hours. What does that entail? It can be a valuable experience if that's what you want out of it. So it depends on what you make of it.
Oh, you know what? I think I just realized one of the big differences back then and now is that in order to be licensed, you needed 2 years at a CPA firm.
But if you got the
Yeah, for the
master's,
master's, it was just
Yeah, you
one,
just
it
need
was
one,
1 year.
but you still need it to work at a public
Yeah.
accounting.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, you had to
Yes.
work in public.
Yeah, whereas now you can work almost
Anywhere.
anywhere.
Yeah.
as long as you're under.
So maybe that's the
Yeah.
real
Yeah.
concern there too, is that the experience may not be comparable to the candidates.
I would argue that the additional education is not, it has less impact than experience does in that sense. And I had no problems with people with a bachelor's degree in accounting, and yet an accounting degree. And I still would prefer to have the 2 years experience. Esoteric side of the field in terms of that. If you're going to be in education or you're going to be in analysis or research or something like that, I think it's a lot more important, right? But for just somebody who's going to practice, I've always seen it, and that's the issue I think that everybody's come to, is that there's no evidence that having just a bachelor's degree makes any real difference in the performance of the quote newly licensed CPA. And frankly, I would think that even with 150 hours, you'd be better off having them have 2 years experience than 1 year. And if at all possible, I would prefer to have at least the year. Even with just 1 year, at least make it required to be public accounting, because you learn so much more in a public accounting scenario than you do in any of the other scenarios you can think of.
The longest time, I was always often asked, do you need a master's degree to work in public accounting? I said no, all these years.
Yeah.
But I also have a master's, Sean, so.
Yeah, we never had.
But I tell them, no, you don't need it.
Florida went
And
to
now it's
the,
150.
well, Florida went to the 150 in 1982. I passed the exam in 76, but when I graduated in 74, the bachelor's degree I had to get the CPA. At that time, which is only 8 years before, I probably would have gotten the master's if I had enough money to pay for it, but I didn't. So I could take $150 and buy my books and sign up to take the exam, or I could spend, $25 getting a master's degree at that time, which now it's 30,000, 25, 30,000, right? So to me, it was a no-brainer because I didn't have any money. I went to school on loans. You're going to do the cheapest route possible, right? So I became a CPA. But 8 years later, Florida was the first one that said, no, we need 150 hours. And, they went from, in 1982, when they enacted the requirement, they went from having 3,100 and some odd candidates to sit for the exam to 320 something candidates sit for the exam. So they reduced their candidate volume by over 90%. And they touted the 150 hours by saying that the benefit was that, look, we now have like a 80% pass rate. Of course, that's because, 200 people out of the 300 passed because they already had the 150 hours of education. So,
Yeah, one of the benefits for me was that I went into the program after my, so I was in a graduate program after 3 years, which means I now qualified for a pro tech.
Right.
So that was part of the motivation. So I had my 4th year and 5th year paid for with the pro tech.
Makes
Yeah.
a big difference. And that's one of the bigger arguments today against it is just purely the cost.
Yeah.
With everything that's happened in higher education, the cost has just gone nuts. You think you got a 1 year of education, it's just $35,000. Fortunately, according to Martha, the MAC program now at UOG, I think she said the cost, they've got it down to around 10,000
For 1 year.
which, for that extra 30 hours. So, so for the program. So a lot more reasonable than you can get it in a lot of other places, so, but I mean, that's, our focus was you could qualify our candidates for licensure, locally. And that's the reason we're supporting them. We don't have a problem supporting it. But I mean, like anybody else, if I'd had the money, I probably would have gotten a master's degree. It's, it is what it is, and that's the big argument that a lot of people make today. On top of the fact that they say that the additional hours that you're supposed to have, in some cases with a number of people, has absolutely no relation to what you're doing, because there's no specificity in what it is. And there actually are people who take PE and scuba diving and basket weaving and all that kind of stuff just to get the hours. And that's the sad part. And I think if you're going to have it, you should have some level of specificity or relativity to what you're doing. So anyway, that's where the argument stands. So I guess we'll see what Minnesota does. No, it's Missouri. That's the show me state, right? Okay.
But with the 150 for 1 year of experience.
Yeah. And most jurisdictions, I think there's only 6 jurisdictions, and we're one of them that require a test experience if you wanted a test license. Most of them don't,
Which is Guam as well. We don't require.
No, we do.
We do. We're the
require
one in the
that.
6.
We were 1,000 hours of a test experience.
If you wanted a
directly.
test
Yeah,
license.
you have to be directly supervised by somebody who's authorized to sign audit reports and get audit experience. So, yeah.
So that kind of puts them into having to work for public accounting firms then.
Right.
As to what other options would they
You
have?
decide if you're going to be in auditing, then you need to get auditing experience. So,
Except if they have 150 hours, and it'll just be 1 year
right.
or 1,000 hours.
No.
Like the
As long as you're super.
It doesn't necessarily have to be with public accounting.
Yeah, that's not a real audit. They don't do real audits.
Yeah.
Thank you for that clarification.
BJ sign.
Speak into the microphone. In order for that
I'll stop
experience to qualify you, it has to be under the direct supervision of a person that's licensed to sign the test report. So you'd have to be under a licensed CPA who's authorized to do a test.
Or the test
report.
But your experience has to be a test related, of course, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I don't know that anybody at the OPA has a test license.
I don't
Not
think so.
anymore.
Well,
Really? Wow.
yeah.
I don't know if there's any that's left.
Yuka's not there.
No,
Well,
she left.
no,
Yeah, so who
Yuka's
else was
the
there that
hospital.
had a license? Yuka.
I'm not sure.
Did you go out for a public accounting firm before she went to the OPA?
No.
No.
Oh,
So
she
how
doesn't
could
have a
she get
test.
an
You're right. She
official
probably doesn't have a test.
Yeah.
So Randy. or-
Unless she
or
got
Zachary
it before we enacted the requirement.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I don't.
Because prior to our 2006 or 16, I can't remember, 6, I think.
Doris was in the office when she asked for the change.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was there.
Yeah.
You know, if that's possible, if Doris was there, she test license, and so
Mhm.
people under her.
Right.
Yeah.
Probably that could count.
Right.
Okay.
And then people slow.
Yeah, well, that's like when I was,
Yeah, but you know, they do performance audits. They don't
Yeah.
really do.
right,
Yeah,
they don't do financial audits. so
no, I don't think so.
But is it financial or does it matter?
Doesn't say.
Doesn't say, right?
Just
It's a
auditing,
test.
auditing.
Auditing.
Oh, sounds part of the organization.
But I mean, in terms of the public auditor, I mean, they do performance audits, but in terms of some relative to, making sure things comply with standards, I guess. So,
Mm,
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, they have
You
their
can
own
argue.
standards. They have their own
But
standards.
before I graduated, I was working with Florida State. There were several people that I worked with that were employees of the university working on their degrees, and they were actually working under the university's auditor, who was a licensed CPA, and so they got credit for their experience by virtue of that.
Yeah, like, so our, at DOE, when I was there, the internal auditors worked, did work for the,
Yeah.
For the audit. But anyway,
Yeah.
Okay, maybe that was a
Understood.
discussion on the 150. I think Minnesota's not gonna be the only state.
No,
There's gonna be others.
I'm kind of anxious to see what's going to happen between now and the regional meetings. I mean, the AICPA and NASBA are coming down pretty hard on it.
Yeah.
And, they're hammer anybody else that brings it up, so. But it comes up every time we have an executive director call, so. Not that I see it changing anytime soon, but anything's possible. So, the other thing we had here is about it's just informational, but the AICPA released the blueprints
Blueprints, right?
for the redesigned exam. And the blueprints essentially is what is available for anybody who wants to take the exam to review, to see what they really need to study, et cetera, et cetera. I think the blueprints comes by the CPE providers and the course, the prep course for determining how they need to focus materials and stuff like that. So, but it is out there and it's available and it's all over the NASFA's FBA websites and candidate bulletins and all that kind of stuff. So, there's one little notice here on the last page of this thing was access to the full transition policy, which, we discussed before. And that's the fact that anybody who has credit on December 31st, 2023 gets extended for 18 months, et cetera. But candidates should note that the last day of testing for all current CPA exam sections, the existing exam, is anticipated to be December 15th. In other words, of 2023. So the very last exam that will be taken by anybody of the existing exam will be December 15th, 2023. Now, what that means is that if you want to be in the current exam, you certainly need to register for it at least a couple of months before that, maybe like 6 months before that, because otherwise you're not going to get a seat.
Yeah.
Because we know that people tend to pile up into getting it done before they go to the new stuff.
I think especially, is it BEC that the recommendation is to take that before it changes?
Yeah, because if you don't pass BEC by the end of this year, 2023, then you are required to take one of the disciplines.
Which is new, right?
And the disciplines are all new, yeah. And taking the new discipline, you're looking at 6 to 8 week score delays and all that kind of stuff. So I think the probably the biggest demand for the last half of this year will be BEC.
Yeah. Okay.
But otherwise, we've already discussed all the stuff that's in there.
Okay. So next is what, you want to go to the financials
Or
or?
go to the financials. If you look at the December financials, it's estimated again.
It's 1 quarter.
Yeah, it's the first quarter of FY 2023. It's estimated again. I came out with 12,000 for the December applicants. We never get the applicant data until the end of the following month. So the exam application fees is 37,000, includes a 1,000 estimate, which I think is pretty close. So far, I've been within about $1,000 every month, plus or minus. Close enough. But so for the first quarter, we're up to 100,000 in revenues, and our annual budget for the year was 500 in revenues. And I'm pretty sure we're going to exceed the 537 The only thing that's kind of lagging right now is the licensing fees, but it always comes in the May, June, April, May, June period. And then the July. So I don't have any doubt that we'll hit the 270 licensing fees. So I'm pretty sure we'll probably come in somewhere around 600,000 in revenue.
So the first quarter is usually slow.
Yeah, it dips down a little bit. Expense wise, we're pretty much on target. I don't foresee us going over 400,000 in expenses for the whole year, not counting any contribution. Again, noting that the budgeted expenses are from the 1989 budget that the legislature passed. They've never changed it since then. Even though we submit our new request every year, they just use the old one. I guess it's easier not to have to change the form or something, whatever they're using. I have no idea. But just for the first quarter, we're at 6,000 in excess revenues. I'm thinking we'll be somewhere between 50 and 75 for the year, if not more. So we're still holding our own in that sense. And we're still holding the TCD for Bank of Hawaii, which expires, that matures this coming April. So at that point, we can take that cash and then make a decision whether we want to go ahead and contribute it into the endowment fund. Because the previous logic was that we earn a lot more in the endowment fund than we do in the TCD at 0.2%.
Is that a discretionary contribution or is that a mandated contribution?
No, it's discretionary. The board can contribute whenever they want to. So,
But today's point, there's two things. One is
yeah.
supposedly before it gets better returns than
No,
than the savings, right?
the TCD is 0.2%
Yeah.
interest
Yeah,
from 2
So-
years ago. Now, I'm not sure what we would get, probably 2% or 3%, but
Yeah, the other main reason why we're contributing to the fund is because if we don't, then,
legislature will sweep it.
yeah, which has happened before,
They took our first million.
million.
so if you look at the budget, it doesn't include the 300,000, that's not on there.
Well,
There is,
this budget, the 789,000, that includes the 300,000 contribution.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but is the 300,000 in the budget act? Would you see that there?
yeah, because this is the approved, this is the,
Okay,
But I think we have a legal opinion that says we can do more than that.
yeah. This expense budget, the 789,
yeah,
that's the actual appropriated money.
Yeah.
But in the previous budget act,
yeah,
they passed, there was a provision passed that allowed us to use any of our excess fund balance
mhm,
to contribute. So we can contribute any of the excess we can contribute whenever we're ready.
Yeah, there's something specific that says
Yeah, it was in the last budget act. It authorizes the use of any excess funds from prior years.
okay, but it doesn't mandate the contribution of the 300,000.
No, it's just an appropriate.
Nor are we limited to 300,000, so it's both ways.
Yeah, the 300 is the appropriated amount, but it's not a requirement.
Okay,
Yeah, it's just an appropriate, it's just
I see.
part of the appropriation. But again, that comes from the, 2019. Submitted and never been changed since then, so they approve the same amount of expenses every year.
it's always, it's included, right?
Yeah, because they,
Replicating the same budget.
we've changed it in
Groundhog
our
Day.
submission,
Yeah.
the budget we submit got changed, but they've never changed it. And they don't budget our revenues because we're a special revenue fund, so, but I don't think they really care much because we don't spend any of their money, so, unless they know that we have money they want to take, which you'll notice I always show as a restricted fund balance. And I show it as restricted because we knew that the test center revenues would ultimately go away. And originally that was actually funding the board because without it, we wouldn't be funded. So And when it ended, I wanted to have at least 3 years of expenses held in reserve, so if anything comes up exam wise or whatever, we can still fund the board.
And the thing about the millions, when it was taken, we only find out after it's
Yeah.
taken.
Yeah, we were ready to, well, that was the first million that I was gonna use to start the endowment fund. And, you know, they stuck a provision into the budget law that we didn't know about, that just took it and gave it to UOG, $1 million, just swept it out and gave it to them. When I asked Randy, can you show me what you did with it? And the answer is no. Went down the black hole of UOG expenses.
It was meant for operations, so it could have been for
Yeah.
payroll
Yeah.
or
So what benefit came of it for our licensees? Yeah. And that's one of the big arguments. A lot of the other jurisdictions have, they actually refund monies to their licensees because they find out, oh, we've got, and they're all, the ones that are all funded from licensing and test revenues, they don't get any from the local government itself, just like us. So the argument is we should be benefiting our licensees because it's their money.
it is. And in a way, indirectly or directly, the visiting professors, that's why they're required to provide free CTE
Right.
for us.
Absolutely.
That's one way we benefit from it.
All of the visiting professors, we require to provide at least a minimum of 1 day for each semester for free CPE. You know, it's part of the benefits.
Current
But-
licenses and future licenses.
Right, right. So we're holding our own. I don't see any issues with that. And this is just the October to November. You can see that the on the little graph here, that the sections for FY23 decreased a little bit compared to last year, which was flat. But the applicants for 2023 are still increasing relative to last year. So our overall revenue is up over last year. And the applicants, the mix of the applicants is changing. And that's what I've noticed most recently. It used to be reasonably close to, you know, half and half of between retests and new applicants. Now it's a 2 to 1. There's one new applicant for every 2 applicants that are retesting. And that's just telling me that, you know, we've got more people in the pipeline that are trying to get done than we have coming in. So I'm expecting the new applicants to taper off, you know, ultimately. And that kind of brings me to the budget here. You guys want to discuss the
That was
revenue
that separate.
projection side of it?
That was that
or-
separate.
Yeah.
Separate, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's discuss the budget.
I have a copy here if you want to look at it.
This one I had to print out.
What I did to project, the revenue projection was a little bit difficult this year. More so than previous years, because, you know, previous years, we just kind of know that things are kind of humming along. We can tell, but the fact that the new exam is going to start in January of 2024, which is the start of the second quarter of fiscal 2024, means we're going to have 3 quarters of new exam. So I'm anticipating, I went back to 2010, 2011 fiscal years, because 2010 was the end of the first computerized exam. And 2011, they made a number of changes in the windows, changes in the test, the simulations were introduced, those kind of things. And because of that, it was the most comparable period to what's coming with the new exam now, the changes in things. So we had a big buildup through 2010, FY 2010, because people wanted to get done before the new one, right? They didn't want to have to do the new kind of testing. And what happened was from an application standpoint or a candidate standpoint, we had a big buildup, and then the first new exam period kicked in. There was a 34% drop, 30% drop in that, just that one period from new applicants to new applicants, dropped 37%. That was in 2011. The next fiscal year, the drop was, it dropped again 16%. So in those 2 years, you had a 50% drop in applicants. And dropped the third year was a 3% drop, and then it kind of leveled off and picked up a little since then. And that was 10 years ago. So what I did was I went back and did a regression on, what's been happening with us recently with the fact that we've had increasing applicants, and we know we're going to have some level of buildup. Don't know how much, but we're going to have some. So I just kind of used the numbers we've had recently and tried to anticipate somewhat of the buildup. And then for 2024 budgeting purposes, I looked at that drop, and the lowest drop we had on any one period was 14%, and the highest drop was at 35% or so. So I said, well, here's the high and low, and I kind of averaged that out between using the regression numbers I came based on the history of 2010 and 11 versus just using the straight of what our applications had been from just looking at our annualizing the actual data we have for the first 2 months of FY23 and comparing that to. So then I got all those numbers, and then I said, well, maybe the easiest thing to do is just take the geo mean of all of it in terms of the changes and use that. And that's how I came up with the 4,555 number of applicants. That's kind of, I don't know if you do a lot of statistics, but the difference between the average, which is the regular mean, geo mean, and the harmonic mean, which is reciprocal. They say that the geo mean is going to give you the midpoint of all of that put together. So that's why I used it. So it kind of smooths out all of the bumps along the way. And it was I'm using the formulas out of Excel. I'm not a statistical genius. So. But it seemed to be the best way to go, just because, again, it's a best guess number. And then the revenue from that comes from estimating the re-exam versus we get first time applicant $40 and the re-exam applicant is $20. So you have to do the breakdown on that to get the revenue functional. So I came up with the estimate of the 45, and that average fee between the first time and re-exam comes out to, it's been averaging $26 and some odd cents on an overall basis. And so that comes to the 120. So I'm just basically saying, let's budget it $120,000 for the revenue from candidate applications. And you can look in the past for FY21, we had 125,000, and for FY22, 142,000. So if you figure that we're going to have maybe a 30% drop due to the new exam, that's going to drop it down like 50,000, and I'm presuming we'd have some level of increase this year, then I'm okay with the 120,000. I think that's a reasonable estimate. Any questions about that one?
I think it looks okay. 607.
Again, it's a best guess. I mean, I don't think there's any way anybody can tell how many people we're going to get, they want to finish the current exam between now and the end of this fiscal year versus how many we're only going to have 1 quarter of the existing exam, and it's going to be a short quarter. because of the end of the testing is December 15th. So we may have a pretty good first quarter of FY24, but I can't see the new exam doing much in terms of volume, simply because number one, it's new. Number two, though, the scoring delays are going to say if you took the exam in January, you might not get a score until May. So, April or May. So by delaying everything 3 to 4 months, that's just kicking everything, the revenues down the road for the new applicants. So I'm pretty sure they're going to have some level of drop.
Do you think that the individual licensing fees will go down to 270 from the 321 between
No.
22 and 23?
No, actually, I have to say on the FY23 budget, that was actually produced back in December of 2021. And we really had no idea how the licensing fees were going to go then. So I figured, they keep talking about the new exam. So I figured, well, let's just budget what we know we had that year. So, but looking at what is done from the 268 to the 300 to the 320, it's kind of interesting. And then when I went back and actually looked even at the 2010 and 11 data, it was kind of enlightening, because what I realized was that the majority of our licensing fees are the renewals, right? The new license is $500-600 a year. That's about a third, and the renewals are at least 2/3, if not more. So what I realized was, excuse me, the renewals continued to increase even though the new licenses dropped off. Between the old exam, new exam, the candidates drop. There was some correlation between the candidate drop and the new license drop. There's absolutely no correlation between the renewals dropping.
And
So because the renewals continued to increase, even though everything else was decreasing, I basically planned it out the same way.
but we still will probably end up this fiscal year with more than the 270.
I'm sure we will, yeah.
And then I had a question about the education. Where's that? Yeah, is that, did you put that up there? Or?
Hang on just a second.
This one where we have to reimburse them licenses, right?
Yeah, see, so we're looking at even just the first quarter here, we've got 50,000 in revenues, and we're showing certification fees above the licensing. The renewal, individual licensing is the renewal fees, the certification is the new. So we've got a 2-to-1 ratio. We're going to have at least 300,000 in the renewal. It put us closer to the 340, 350 in terms of total licensing revenue.
That's why it's
For
asking.
2023.
First quarter is slow quarter usually. It's
Right.
pretty low.
People wait for the deadline.
Yeah, that,
Yeah.
and it's the holiday period and people don't do any more than they have in terms of these kind of things. Yeah. So what were you asking about education?
The education support, did we take that program off already?
Oh, yeah. No, we're still trying to get that
Oh, do
through
we,
the
we have to,
attorney thing where we reimburse new
do we have to go
licensees.
through the AAA, or do we,
Huh.
is it legislated? Or both?
Well, I thought we could do it as a policy, but the AG's office, Rob Weinstein, is saying, and even Joe McDonald was telling me, you're better off not to do it as a policy, make it a rule.
Which requires a AAA?
Well, the AAA now is a whole lot different than it used to
Yes,
be.
it's crazy.
Yeah, it's insane. So I was kind of hoping to get that, maybe get them to change that before we actually do. Otherwise,
You can have
what
someone
I'm-
introduce it.
well, yeah, what I'm looking we need to rewrite the rules anyway because of the exam changes and all that stuff. So I was thinking that we should just read the whole thing and then have the rules just enacted and sort of do the whole thing.
Who's is Joe?
Joe's
our-
still, I asked him to, I met him, I don't remember where I met him.
Joe.
Augustine.
Joe S.
Okay.
Yeah, Senator Joe S. And he said, yeah, he was certainly going to remain our oversight chair, no matter what.
Yeah, as long as he doesn't force us to do the AAA, I think.
No, he's happy to do this. And I told him I wanted to rewrite the rules and just have it introduced. He said, no problem, I'll do it. So
So you'll just embed that in the rules.
the whole thing, yeah. Yeah,
So it'll
so that's what it is. So what I'm estimating there is that our reimbursement amount was a max of 1,500. So if we got 5 new licensees that we reimburse, because remember, they have to actually get licensed. They can't just pass the exam.
And they have to be from Guam, right?
Right.
Well, the question I had before was, what type of license? So, because when they pass the exam, they can still get an inactive license.
No, we wanted to be an active.
An active,
license.
right? Active license, okay,
I put that in the requirements. So, yeah, we're going to change to be an active license.
okay.
Can be non-attest, to be an active license.
Active.
Yeah, we want a CPA that can work.
Yeah. They can call themselves a CPA in public
Yeah,
without a disclaimer.
there you go. Yeah. So, but that's the 7,500 was presuming that if we get it going, there'd be 5 of them in a year. It's limited to 1,500. Okay. Other questions?
I noticed you did budget in the 300 or 100 at least for the,
Well,
because there's no, I mean, we, in the previous years, we were just I guess reducing our cash balance basically.
right. And we can always put some in. I mean, I left it out of this just basically so we can see what we're really looking at in revenues versus expenditures.
Yeah. Okay.
Because any contribution we make is going to come out of the fund balance.
Fund balance.
When do we have to submit it?
The end of the, well, I think it says January 30th in the law, something like that.
Do you need a motion?
Yeah, we need a motion to approve it, so. Okay,
Okay, there were no changes recommended or anything, right? As is. Can I hear a second? To approve the budget. Thank you, Sean.
okay.
Okay,
Yeah,
FY 24, wow, that's,
Yeah,
FY 24 budget.
it's gonna be really interesting to see what actually happens with the exam. I can't see AICPA and NASBA and Prometric all are gonna have to be raising their fees, I'm pretty sure.
Do you think the test center is gonna continue?
I know, and my conversations with Ken Bishop and Pat, they have no intention of continuing the test center. They actually are giving exams. That's why I budgeted 5,000, but we had 100.
From Taiwan or?
I think we had 135 exam sections given in FY 2022. And yeah, over half of those were Taiwanese, and the other half mostly were local Guam candidates. And then we had a few Chinese and a few Koreans, but, no more than 10.
There's still testing centers in Korea, right?
Testing in Korea, testing in Japan.
Yeah.
I just did get an email the other day. We got an email from a girl in Japan who has one section left to pass and was trying to book it before her credit expires for one of the other sections she's already passed. And she said, and it's middle of January, right? She said, I cannot get a seat booked in a test center in Japan
Wow.
until April. My credit expires before then, so what can I do? Can you extend me? And we're like,
Come to them.
why should we? Well, that's the first thing we said. You're welcome to come to Guam and test. It's wide open. But then I emailed Pat and I said, Pat, what's going on? You know, I mean, how could Japan not have a seat for somebody who wants to test in the next 2.5 months, 3 months? And she came back and said, she's right, it's a problem, and we're working with Prometric to have them open additional seats. Has something to do with some holidays, and there's some closures, and you know, all these
Should
kind of
tell
things going
Uncle
on.
Carl to mark it up,
Well, I already have. I talked to him already.
CPA tour.
Yeah, but.
They used to do that,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Before
Well, Randy does it for the Koreans, but you know, now he has the harder time of it because of the testing in Korea. But, yeah, I actually have talked to Carl about that last time I saw him. And then so I got an email 2 days ago that Pat said Prometric has figured out how to make additional seats available, so tell your candidates.
if you did the math, would it be much more expensive for them to have the test here than to do
Well,
it there? Or
really, I mean,
about the same or cheaper? And they get
it depends on where they
couple
are.
days in
I
the
mean,
sun.
if they're in or around,
For them.
yeah, if they're in or around Tokyo, it's not that big a deal. They just get on the train
Yeah.
and go, you know. If they're somewhere where they have to fly in and stay in a hotel, then they're looking at a comparable cost, you know, so. But still, you know, it's just one of those things. But most of our
Small kind of
candidates,
niche
Yeah.
tourist market.
yeah, but most of our candidates now are going to be Taiwanese, and, you know, the fact that we will get, if China ever figures out what they're gonna do with their COVID concerns and return quarantines, because that's what's really stopping them. Number one, they can't get approval to leave the country, and they can't get back in if they do without quarantine that they have to pay for. But Taiwan and other countries that have opened up, it's not a problem, but we would probably get at least a couple hundred Chinese a month, a couple hundred sections of Chinese test takings a month, if they could get here to take it. So that's the other issue, that side of the coin.
The getting here to take is because of visa or?
Right now, as China won't give them any approval to leave the country, you know. The one other thing that I found out about Japan, what Carl was telling me about Japan was that they made the Japanese government huge discounts to the hotels, the local Japanese hotels, to have people come and stay in the hotels locally in Japan. They're trying to keep their tourists home
They're getting credits
so
or
they can,
vouchers or something.
you know, rebuild their economy essentially. So the government actually gave them credit for that kind of stuff to try to keep their tourists in Japan, not, you know, going out of the country. So that didn't help either at this point. But hopefully, if China ever figures out how to, you know, let people out, I mean, they've kept them locked up for so long. We thought we had a bad lockdown. I will be in China. You can't leave your house, not even to go to the doctor. That's why they had all their protests. So.
There's a testing center in Korea, right? So Japan cannot go to Korea.
I don't think there's any restriction from a regulatory standpoint, meaning NASBA, ICPA, or Prometric or anything else, but just from a pure Japanese versus standpoint, I don't think you'd get a lot of Japanese going to Korea.
So the testing centers are
But the
open.
test center in Korea is not it's very small. It only has 30 seats, something like
I
that.
see,
So
okay.
So they may be packed too.
I'm pretty sure they are,
Yeah.
probably. They probably are, yeah. Yeah.
What I hear too is that a lot of Japanese are traveling to Korea for just part of the local, and since it's just right next door, that's where they go instead of going to other places.
For the K-pop concert.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably. I don't know.
shopping.
I've heard that, but yeah.
beauty things. Yeah, that's what I hear.
Very possible.
It's all the reasons why I'm gonna go to Korea.
To watch the K-pop?
Shopping and the beauty.
Oh, for your kids,
I'm kidding. Like,
or for you.
Yeah.
that's not, there's no incentive to go to Korea.
I hear you. I
You
hear
said-
you.
Good food.
K-pop, yeah, the food, okay, yes.
Yeah.
Someone's trying to bring K-pop to Guam.
The young girls like it. I guess there's some girl bands too, right?
Yeah. Anyway, the regional meetings will be in June this year. I'm going to the executive director meeting, which is the end of February, 1st of March in Tucson, of all places. The Western Region meeting this year is in Kansas City again. So I don't know who wants to go to Kansas City. but
Kansas
if
City.
anybody wants to go, let me know. I think it's towards the end of June. But I have an AICPA council meeting, which is in May. And as it turns out, it's the exact same dates as a meeting I'm going to go to for business purposes, STG business purposes in Vegas. So I'm going to skip the AICPA council meeting this time. But if, I did ask Rob Weinberg from the AG's office if he wanted to go to the legal council meeting for NASBA, and he said yes, so he got a scholarship.
That's all I got approved, yeah.
Yeah, so I hope he goes. He said that things are really crazy over at the AG's offices. You know, the
Wonder
new
why.
I'd
AG
like to
coming
be a
in,
fly on that wall.
new AG coming in, and a number of attorneys have departed. So,
That's right.
Oh, Carl's still there.
I would imagine so, but I know there's been at least 10 or 15 of them that have left already, so. So we'll see what happens. He said he's just very busy because he's supposed to help me reword some of the rules
I
relative.
heard one of the DOE attorneys was gonna go back to the AG's office.
Yeah, I don't know. But it's one of those things, I think now they might be feeling like they should be careful what they wish for, so. You know, it's anybody's guess.
Well, it's only 80 votes, right? What was the difference?
Yeah, not much.
70 or
Yeah.
70 or 60, I
Very
um,
slim.
Yeah, so, but anybody who wants to go to the Western Region meeting, let me know. I would likely wind up going to the Eastern Region meeting, which is in the 1st of June, because the meeting I'm going to for business is 4 days before the regional meeting, the Eastern Region meeting, so.
Where did you say where the annual meeting is?
The annual meeting this year
in New York.
is in New York City. And it again is late October.
Same hotel
End of
last time.
October. Yeah, I think so.
Right in Times Square.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's late October, the end of October, 1st of November.
You
again.
should go, Sean, first,
Or at least the regional, good, where's the
The
new board?
the regional
board,
meeting is when they have the new board member
member.
orientation.
Yeah, that one's good.
I think
You got
it's
to go,
it's,
right?
I didn't go to
June.
that one, but I went to something,
Yeah, you did, we went.
but it wasn't the
Yeah.
new orientation.
Yeah.
I see.
It's the regionals that have a
When
new
when is
board.
the annual meeting?
The annual meeting is the end of October. Typically.
You'll be there
around the
for
29th.
Halloween.
29th or 30th, yeah, usually the
Also-
Halloween.
The
The
last
regional
time-
meeting, I think, is like June the 25th or something like that. I don't know. Some towards the end of the,
Yeah, I get back in early October, so.
Okay.
I'll think about. And the regional was in June, right?
June, right, the end of, yeah, I think it's the 25th of June, I think of June, something like that, in Kansas City.
Definitely should try
And that meeting has the new board member orientation if you want to go to.
It's just that when you attend that, you're 4 days,
Yeah, you get one extra day. It's
4 full days.
that, the orientation
3.5.
is the day before the actual meeting, so. They take you through all the NASBA stuff and, you know.
Has everyone been through the regional meeting?
Pretty much.
I went to the annual, last one was in Maui.
Yeah,
10
been a
years
while,
ago.
yeah. I'm not, maybe 5, 6 years.
But I never attended any meeting until I became chair. It was like for 5 years, I'm like, no, it's okay, I'll pass.
Speaking of meetings, I'll be going on a trip on the 16th of February, so I'm not sure when we have our next meeting scheduled, but it's usually around that
Third
time.
week.
Zoom.
That's the
I'll
day
be
of
on
the
a plane.
meeting, the 16th meeting day for
Yeah.
February.
I'll be on a plane.
Okay, okay. So noted. We
Did
have
you
to-
circulate? Was it just
I
every?
think, I thought Arlene did.
Yeah,
I think it was
a
Arlene
draft.
did, yeah, yeah.
No.
Yeah. The final one we put up on the website.
Okay.
I was waiting to get the meeting dates from NASBA. Yeah, the 16th would be the February meeting. So, no problem.
Okay,
Okay.
if there's no other items on the agenda,
I'm-
oh, you want more?
My board membership is expiring, so I'm gonna
Right,
need
yeah,
to,
I've instructed Arlene.
yeah, she already talked to
Well,
me.
that's fast.
To
So,
send
I think
the,
I was filling the
Oh, for
fundraiser
Todd.
for Daphne.
oh, Daphne,
so she's, I think Arlene's already sent the letter. Last week, yeah, for reappointment.
okay, can I,
No other business.
no other business, can I hear a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So to adjourn.
Second.
Second, all right, meeting adjourned.
Want to kill it?
Off it.
Justin.
You have to show John this picture.
It's still stuck? With me eating? Oh my gosh.
No.
Oh. It's, that's what I'm saying.